Good evening. Welcome to the cabin in the middle of the woods. And I say evening, it's the first time I've done a video. It's about 10 o'clock at night instead of during the day. I've got 6 dogs in the room, so you might have some interruptions. You might hear a bit of crackling from the log fire over there. But we'll give it a go. I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health issues, Stoicism, and how they both relate to what I did building my own home and living off grid. Now, I know a little bit about mental health through a job I used to do as a key worker, working with people with mental health issues, liaising with psychiatrists, occupational therapists, nurses. I also know a little bit because my best friend ended up being diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic with psychotic tendencies and ended up killing himself. And I had quite a few discussions with his therapist and his psychiatrist, so I gleaned some information from that. And I think there's a few reasons why we're seeing mental health issues go through the roof today, especially with young people. And I'm fairly sure I can understand both reasons. The first reason is we've taken away a lot of hope and the future. And I'm not doing a Greta here. We haven't stolen their future. But it's certainly much harder for young people to move forward with their lives than it was for me. Things seem to be, to me, much simpler then than they are today. When I was at school, roughly 5%, maybe 5 to 10% of the students were ever going to go on to university. 90% never were. They would go to college or an apprenticeship. Most would leave school and start work. Well, kids can't do that today. They've got to go on to further education. They've changed all the colleges to universities and told the kids, isn't it great that so many people can go to university today? But by doing that, they've actually made universities no big thing. It's not that they've improved the education of 90% of the kids. They've just lowered what it means to go to university. And kids aren't stupid. They understand that going to university now is no big deal. Everybody does it. Which is why a job down the local pub now is saying minimum A-level qualifications for a menial bar job. You've got to have a degree to work in Starbucks, because a degree no longer means anything. And like I said, kids aren't stupid, they understand this. But they've got to go to uni. They can't leave school and get a job. So they go to college or they go to university, more often university, because most of the colleges are now universities. And they do their degree in whatever it is they choose to do, which they know and understand means nothing academically, means nothing in the real world, because everyone's got one, which reduces its value. And they now have to suffer under educational fees. So not only do they leave university after 4 years with a fairly useless degree, but also saddled with 50 or 60,000 pounds worth of debt. That's not a great start for adulthood. That's a lot of stress to be under. My first house cost 24,000, and that debt was terrifying. So to leave university in your first years of adulthood with £60,000 worth of debt or £50,000 worth of debt, with a qualification that everybody's got, so it means nothing, is daunting, frustrating. And I understand why people suffer from depression. I understand why people are suffering from anxiety. There's a good chance that if I was 18, 19 now in that situation, I'd be depressed. If I looked forward to the future and saw that there wasn't much of one, the jobs are disappearing. And even if I got one, I wouldn't be able to buy a house. I'd have to go into rented accommodation. And whilst I'm paying that rent, I wouldn't be able to save. And if I can't save, I'm never going to get the deposit to move forward onto the housing ladder. So I'm never going to have what my parents had. That would lead to anger, frustration, depression, anxiety about what I was going to do, how I would move forward. So we see depression and anxiety going through the roof for understandable reasons. And it's not just that. Everything seems to be upside down. And I'm talking about the UK, maybe it's different in different countries, but it seems to be that the media says one thing, but what you see in the country with your own eyes is something completely different. Half-truths, lies from government. And this COVID fiasco is like the cherry on top of the cake. More half-truths, more lies, nothing making sense. More of your future being taken away. Welcome to the new normal. Not, it's okay, we'll get back to how it was. This is the way it's going to be. And we wonder why suicide's on the rise, depression's on the rise, anxiety's on the rise. What have they got to look forward to? I feel for the young people today. But there's another reason. It's a difficult one to broach because it sounds like I'm contradicting what I've just said, but I'm not. About 20 years ago this started with the It's Good to Talk campaign. It's the normalization of mental health issues. And I get that it is good to talk. If you're suffering from depression or anxiety, you should be able to discuss it. But I'm not sure how far we should go in normalising it. Because to some people, when it's no longer a stigma attached to it, when it does become normal, it can become a reason not to move forward. It can become a reason not to achieve. It can become a reason to take it easy, to coast through. I could never do that. I've got mental health issues. You couldn't expect me to do that. I suffer from anxiety. Don't ask me to do that. I get depression. And it's easy to say those things these days because there is no stigma attached. So there's two reasons, which is the insanity of the world we live in today, which takes away young people's hope of achievement in the future, and the normalization and acceptance of mental health issues. And I'm not sure if the two are tied together, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now, how does that tie into building a house and living in the woods, you may well ask? Well, I was chatting with someone on a stream the other night, and they said, in all your videos you seem to be quite well balanced, quite happy, not stressed. And they asked if living like this reduces stress. And I've got to say it does. I spoke in another video about the way I try to remove myself as much as possible from the problems and issues I saw in society for a simpler life. Certainly harder sometimes, but more honest from my way of thinking. But that I still work, I still have to partake in what goes on in the real world. But I think I found a balance. So for me, it's not half as stressful as being immersed in it. So yes, living off-grid, on my own land, in a house I built myself, is less stressful for me. I've got no rent to pay for a start, no mortgage to pay. My bills are very low. That removes a lot of stress. I enjoy the fact that some things are harder than they would be in normal street. I've spoke about chopping wood for heat. And that's okay. I did about 40 minutes today splitting logs down. And it's hard work. It hurts your shoulders, gives you blisters. But that's okay. For me, it's just saved me another 50 quid on gym membership. And it's honest. And it teaches me delayed gratification. I do have to cut the wood, chop the wood, store the wood, and I can't burn the wood for another year. And then come that year, I'll split the wood down again. And then I can have an evening like tonight where I'm sat in front of the fire burning the wood that I chopped last year. So it's all good. And this year we started growing food, which wasn't a spectacular success. But we'll get better at it. We did get some beans, and we got some tomatoes, and we got some potatoes, and we got some sweet corn. Admittedly, the dog ate most of the sweet corn, or one of the dogs did, and some of the beans, and some of the tomatoes. And the chicken's got a fair few bits and pieces as well. But you know, you learn from these things. So yes, for me it's less stressful. And you might ask yourself, well, why doesn't everyone choose to do something like this? And that's because it's not for everyone. Which brings me on to Stoicism. And I've heard people talking about this on a few other channels. And it obviously means different things to different people. But for me, it's about finding peace, living by natural law, in tune with nature, and achieving goals through your will. Because you see, building this place, even before building this place, buying this land, nobody left me a great lump of money. When I decided that this is what I was going to do, that this was what I wanted to do, then that's what I did. Through the power of will. I saved every penny I could. I searched for land everywhere. And I mean, we drove hundreds and hundreds of miles every day off from work, every weekend, looking for the right location. We were over in Wales, we were down in Somerset, we were further up north. And we looked and looked and looked, and eventually found the right place. So if there's something you want, you'll do it. But you've really got to want it. There's no point just saying, yeah, I kind of fancy that. Well, that won't do it. And if you really want it, you will then do everything you can to get it. And I did. And I did things which I've never ever done before. I'm not a builder. I've never built anything. I've never even put a shed up. I'll be honest with you, I've never even put a shelf up before I built this place. I didn't have a architect's drawing. I didn't even have a sketch that I did. I winged it all the way through. And I knew it would work. I knew it would work because it was exactly what I wanted to do. And I made sure it worked. And I made mistakes along the way, and then you rectify the mistakes. And it did work. So Stoicism, to be still, to be calm, to believe in your own will, and to find happiness. It's a good life here. But it's not for everyone. Anyway, just a short one. 10 o'clock, nothing else to do. No TV tonight. No TV any night, I haven't got one. Anyway, people, I'll speak to you soon.